I got one of these in the post today, well yesterday actually. Confirmation of voter registration 2023. This is the bit of paper that a lot of people have been talking to me about, actually, slightly concerned. They've been sending me emails saying, oh, when we next vote here in the UK, we've got to have some photo ID. I'll come on to that in a minute. So I had one of these pop through my letterbox. So it's to the occupier of this address, which just so happens to be me, as it happens, which is quite lucky. So it says, to the occupier, we need to make sure that our electoral register records are correct. Being registered to vote gives you the right to participate at elections and could improve your credit rating. I'm sorry? Me giving consent to somebody forming a government, how does that have anything to do with my credit rating? And who is rating my credit anyway? And what is credit? Credit is money, isn't it? It's the money that I have. If I'm in credit, I have a certain amount of money. And someone who wants to rate that, and this might improve my credit rating, might improve, doesn't mean to say it will. So that's a bit odd, but we'll park that for another video. From May 2023, if you wish to vote in person at a polling station, can I vote somewhere else then? Can I go down to the post office, or can I just stand in the park and vote? No. If you wish to vote in person at the polling station, you will need to present an accepted form of photographic ID to prove your identity. This is my identity. Have a look at me. Here I am. I'm real. Look, I'm flesh and blood. I'm real. I'm living. I'm a sentient being. This is my identity. If I was asked to go on an identity parade, I would be standing there in reality, wouldn't I? I would be physically there, and whoever thought that something had happened to them and they needed to find out who it was or point to the person they thought from memory who had attacked them, for example, they would be looking around at these people who are actually standing there. They're not looking at photographs. They might look at mug shots and go, oh, I think it was him. But they would get them out so that you form an identity parade. And by doing that, that's their identity, not a bit of paper with a photograph attached. So that's a bit bizarre. I mean, I would turn up at the polling station and say, well, this is my identity. You don't need a picture of me. Why do you want a picture of me? I'm actually here. I'm in front of you. Look, this is real now in real time. That picture was taken days ago. Things have changed. This is real. Here am I. They may say, well, but that's not quite what we mean. We want to prove that you live in the area. You can't prove you're in the area if you could, if you just turn up, you could turn up to loads of polling station and make the vote seem a bit skewed. Well, that may be so. But if we all had to turn up at midday at a polling station, and the count was how many people in this polling station, right? You want to vote for that mob, you want to vote for them, okay, great, let's count you up. If you all had to be at the same place at the same time across the country, you couldn't then have any fraud whatsoever, because you couldn't be in two places at one time, because you can only be in one place, because there's only one physical version of you, and they're just counting you and they can see you, because there you are, flesh and blood. You might think I'm mad, but just think about that. This is your identity, not a bit of paper. It's a convenience for them. But anyway, I'll park that for a moment. So people have been worried that in order to vote, they need this photographic ID. Why? Because in the past, you just, sent me a letter and I turned up with a card and that was enough. It was all on trust. Well, trust is being eroded now. They don't trust us anymore. We have to prove who we are. I don't need to prove. Why do I need to prove I'm me? But that's because all sorts of different people, all of that business. So anyway, so it says here, you must present one of the following forms of photographic identification to vote in person at a polling station, right? So you can have a passport issued by the UK or any of the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man, the British Overseas Territory, or an EEA state or a Commonwealth country. So driving passport. Driving licence, as long as it's got a picture on it, of course. I don't have one of those, by the way. I only have that original green one that came in something like 1979. And it expires, I think, when I reach 70 or 75, I can't remember. So it's still valid, but it doesn't have a picture on it because I haven't moved. What else have we got? A biometric immigration document. That sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? An identity card bearing proof of age. A Ministry of Defence Form 90, which is a defence identity card, apparently. A blue badge, a national identity card, an older person's bus pass, which presumably has a photograph on it, a disabled person's bus pass, an Oyster 60 Plus card, a Freedom Pass, a Scottish National Entitlement card issued in Scotland, a 60 and over Welsh concessionary travel card issued in Wales, that one, a disabled person's Welsh concessionary travel card issued in Wales, right? And there's others. There's a whole load of others. Then it says at the bottom, because now I've got a passport, but it's expired some time ago. Some time ago, I haven't needed to go overseas. Don't want to go overseas, not since they've introduced the a medical intervention you have to have in order to get onto an aeroplane to go overseas, you know. So I have no wish to go overseas at the moment. Thank you very much. Not if I have to take any substance into my body. I don't wish to do that. However, it says here, expired forms of identification can still be used in a polling station as long as it's still a good likeness of yourself. This is a good likeness of myself. This is my identity. I can make a mark for you. I can autograph something if you like, but this is the genuine me. Anyway, so that all seems a bit of a nonsense, really. But that is really about giving the consent when you vote. You're giving the consent for a bunch of people who seem to me mostly villains. You're consenting that villains, sometimes they're good intentioned villains, but they seem to turn into villains nonetheless, that these people that you're consenting can form a government. Even the word is a bit strange, isn't it? A government. They are now governing you because you've consented to it. You've voted for them. That's your consent. I consent that you should be in government. You can form a society, a group, a business, whatever it is, and you can now govern me. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit, actually, because I'm not sure I want to be governed anymore. Because when they govern you, they come up with these rules or statutes. And it doesn't seem that the things they promise, they never seem to deliver. And actually, even if you look at their manifestos, their promises, and they say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to do the other, not only do they not do the things that they promise, but also the people who I would like to vote in, who I believe in, sometimes aren't even on the form. You know, certain parties, they haven't got a candidate. So you can't vote for them because there isn't a candidate to vote for. So then you think, well, do I vote for the lesser of the evils? Or do I not bother to vote at all, actually? And when you look at the two major parties, the Tories and the Labour Party, really and truly, it's going to be one of them that gets in, chances are. And I don't believe in any of the things. I used to vote for the Tories. Well, I voted for a party that would, conservatories, you know, not conservatories, that's a thing that goes on the back of the house. Conservatories, the Conservatives, about conserving, if I can get my words out, conserving. I was interested in somebody who will conserve our heritage, conserve our landscape, our countryside, conserve our traditions and our customs, conserve our freedoms, conserve our freedom of speech, that will have that interest. That's what I always thought they stood for or should stand for. And I understand that the Labour Party would stand for people who are working, labour, working with their hands, the people who go out to work, and both are noble principles. And if you could have a bit of both, that would be perfect, because I would vote for people who stand up for people who are being oppressed. And if you're working with your hands and you're giving your labour and you're being oppressed, then, that's not fair, is it? Nobody wants to be oppressed. And I also want to conserve the world that I grew up in, that I love, the England that I like, and part of Great Britain, all of the various countries that make up Great Britain. I would love to conserve that. But the parties we've got at the moment, the villains that we've got at the moment, they don't seem to do that anymore. They're not really interested in those things. We saw it so blatantly during the pandemic. Statutes, this oppressive, emergency powers we're now going to have, and we're going to tell you what you're going to do. We're going to lock you down. Well, okay, the first lockdown you might go, oh, okay, we're a bit frightened, aren't we? We're a bit worried by things. Yeah, fair enough. Maybe you know best because you kind of know stuff that we don't know. We're so busy getting on with our lives. We don't know everything. And you've got information being fed into you. That's why we gave you the consent to sort of administer us and make sure we're all okay. But after that, I think that you could have had a public consultation with us. You could have asked us what we think. You could have said, look, you've put us here by your consent, and we'd like to perhaps lock you down a bit, or we'd like to sort of mandate a vaccine, or we would like to do this and we would like to do that, which is going to be a major infringement of your rights, your freedoms. I think maybe the government should have asked us a bit more and said, look, we'll discuss this as much as you like, as much as you, the people who've given us the consent, want and need, so that there is trust that we are doing the job you, the people, have done, have asked us to do. Because as soon as the trust has gone, the trust that your consent is viable, the consent is gone, isn't it? If somebody whacks you on the head and you didn't ask them to, you've been oppressed, haven't you? That's somebody's done it of their own free will, not yours. You didn't ask them to whack you on the head. You've been violated. If you didn't ask for your movements to be restricted, say in a 15-minute city where, actually, if you drive down this road too many times, we'll fine you. You didn't ask for that, did you? That's oppression, isn't it? That's tyranny. That's dictatorship. We're going to fine you. Well, I'm not very happy with that, actually. Thank you very much. No disrespect to you. I'm sure you're coming up with some lovely ideas. But to be honest with you, didn't really ask. When I gave you my consent and you said, here's my list of promises, you didn't say that you would shut down my environment and stop me travelling about. You didn't say that you are going to get rid of all the other banks and have one central bank. You didn't say that all my private details are going to be kept on a computer and that I will have a digital ID. You didn't actually say that to me when I gave you my consent. You've made this all up and you've said you're having it, like it or not. You might say, oh, it's voluntary now, but we know how you work because you're villains. You lie. You're always lying. You say one thing one day and you do something else. We've seen it. So I'm just beginning to think I don't want to be governed by a body of people because I don't really trust you anymore. I don't trust you. It's always been that slightly worrying thing. So you might say, well, what would happen? What would happen if nobody voted for it? If the people of this country or Great Britain, all the countries, decided we don't want a government? I'm not going to vote. Think how a government is formed. It's a bunch of people, potential villains, let's say, a bunch of people, they might be well-meaning, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. There's a bunch of people who as yet have no power whatsoever. They're just like you and me. And they say, we would like to form a government, please. And you say, oh really? Why? Well, we think we can look after your best interests by these people coming together. We'll represent you, okay, and we will do what you need us to do to make life easier. Well, that's okay. But have you got any power at the moment? No power whatsoever, because we haven't formed a government. We need your consent. You need to vote for us. Right. What if I don't vote then? What if he doesn't vote and she doesn't vote? Or if none of us vote, if we don't actually like you? What if we don't trust you? If we don't believe in you? Well, if you don't vote for us, we can't form a government, can we? No. If we don't vote for you, you can't form a government, and then you can't tell us what you want us to do. So, well if nobody forms a government, what will happen? Well, we'll just have to govern ourselves, won't we? We'll just have to be responsible for ourselves, for our own actions. I think most people in the land can use a bit of common sense, can't they? We could have an administration that we agree to. For example, it would be useful, instead of having rules and statutes, could we not just have guidelines? We had guidelines during the pandemic, you may remember. They were just guidelines. There was a law, but you kept telling us to obey the guidelines. Now, guidelines make sense, don't they? You might have a guideline, for example, drive on the left-hand side of the road in England. It's a good guideline, because if everybody follows that guide, if we all drive on the left, you're not going to have so many accidents. But if you just drive willy-nilly anywhere you damn well like, yes, you're likely. So that's a useful guideline. But you might say, well, it's only a guideline, so I don't have to do it. OK, see what happens if you don't do it. Oh, you've crashed into a car coming along. Oh, dear. That means you've actually hurt somebody else. Well, that's where you sort of go, oops, I'm ever so sorry. Didn't mean to hit you. Didn't think you'd be driving on there. Well, what are you, stupid? There's guidelines. You could drive on the left-hand side. If you drove on the left-hand side, we all drive on the left-hand side. We're not going to bump into each other. Yeah, no, that's true. Now, look, you've damaged my car. Oh, yes. Well, what are you going to do about it? I can compensate you for the damage. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's going to cost me probably £100 to fix, or £1,000. I'll tell you what, I'll get it fixed. I'll send you the bill and you need to pay it. Yes, okay. Yeah, silly. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's my fault. Guidelines, they're useful. We would get used to it. Lots of simple guidelines. For example, if you drive on the road and you inadvertently turn left into a bus lane that says, please don't drive in this bus lane. Oh, because it's reserved for buses. Well, there's nobody here. I'm not doing anything. Oops, I'll just turn around and come out. My daughter did that when she first got into a car. Her first long journey, she drove to Reading. She went to Reading. She just passed her test on her own. She wanted to know how to get somewhere because she was going to have a party event with some friends. And so she passed her test, legally able to drive and all of that. She happened to drive into a bus lane and thought, oh, hang on, this isn't right. She turned around, got back onto the road. No damage done, nobody was hurt. There was no reason for any problem whatsoever. But a camera picked her up and she was fined. She had to pay for a simple mistake. That doesn't seem fair. She sort of now knows, oh, bus lane, yeah, no, you don't drive in bus lane. Just a mistake, an honest mistake. Why was she fined? It just seems an unfair system, because it's a rule, it's a statute. The council came up with this rule to earn some money from you. But that just doesn't seem fair. What she should have done is said, do you know what? I'll take this, take me to court. And in the court say, look, actually, I would like, that seems an honest mistake. No, it's a rule. He said, well, put me in front of 6 or 12 members of society. Let them decide. I drove in there, honest mistake. Is that a rule? Should that rule even exist? Oh, I reckon if you had your peers around, or people who didn't even know you, 12 just men from the society, and said, look, I drove in there, it was a complete honest mistake. Should I just pay for just turning? Oh, I made a mistake. Is anybody hurt? No, of course not. I reckon those peers would say, yeah, no, why would we charge you? And who's having the money anyway? Where's that money going? How does that infringement, you've now had to pay because you moved the car in a way that perhaps wasn't ideal. but nobody was there. Nobody was hurt. You know, it's just an arbitrary infringement. Oh, yes, you've done that. We've got it on camera. We're going to... No, guidelines would be better. And if you broke the guidelines, well, it depends. Was anybody hurt? Did you, you know, you drove on the right a little bit longer on there. Does it matter? It was a straight road. There was nobody there. It doesn't really matter, doesn't it? But, oh, there's a car coming. The guidelines say stay on the left. I think we could live our lives so much better if we took responsibility for things. If we asked people to administer in very specific ways. If they want to have a 15-minute city or they want to have digital IDs, I think they should consult us. Your administration should say, OK, look, it's helpful that we have perhaps a police service to make sure that people aren't, you know, we catch criminals, people who nick things from you. That's fair enough. We need a service like that. But to administer it, we need your consent continually. At least that's what I think. So I'm not going to be voting this year, next year when the vote comes up, because I don't believe in governments, because I think governments have proved that they do things on their own back. They have their own agenda. They look like there's some form of democracy, but even democracy I'm challenging these days. Even democracy I think is a bit strange. For example, let's say 5 people decide to rob a little old lady's house. 5 people go in, they rob the house. The little old lady says, excuse me, I rather you didn't do that. Stuff you, madam. And they rob it. Well, that's democracy, isn't it? 5 out of those 6 said, we're going to do this. It's like mob rule. Is that what we really want to live by? That's for another video. So government and voting, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I think I'm going to get myself off the voter register and say, no, sorry, not being part of this. That's villainy. I don't want to be part of your villainy because I disagree with 15-minute cities and central banks and digital ID. I disagree with net zero. I don't think I want to be told that you're going to come and take my wood-burning stove. I don't want any of that. I'm not going to give you the power. I do not consent to you doing stuff that is... Because if I don't consent to it, then it's tyranny. And I'm not doing it. You might want a bit of tyranny. You might want dictatorship. So you're welcome to go and vote and vote in a party so that they can govern you. But I don't want that. I want to stay with my freedoms. Thanks very much. Be interested in your comments, though.